I think we'll make a start. So, welcome everyone to this session today, which is looking all around um, cybersecurity, digital safety within social care. So, loads to get through today. Do appreciate if I can have your interaction throughout the meeting. So, I will share some quizzes, some polls, which I do need you to interact with, just so we can get some live feedback. And also, if you can use the chat. I will ask a few questions. We'll have a few discussion points. If you can just put your answers into the chat, that'll be absolutely fantastic. So let's just jump right into the content today. So we know cybersecurity is really important when it comes to any organization and our personal lives. But let's look primarily at social care within our organizations and why it is so important and why cybercrime is a pressing issue. So I'll start this with just throwing some statistics up. It's quite small, but I'll run through exactly what you're looking at here, so it makes a bit more sense than what you might be seeing right now. But basically, we've got two surveys that are on the screen. This is from the Cyber Breaches Survey, which was done through 2025. And what it was looking at is it was looking at the amount of cybercrime within industry. So this is social care. I pulled the statistics for. What we're looking at here is that of the organizations that did report cybercrime, this on the left are the ones that had an outcome. So that means that the cybercrime was actually successful. It got through, something happened, caused disruption. So these aren't the amount of cybercrimes, these are the ones that actually managed to get into the system. And that's 16% of all of those organizations, which is a worrying statistic. I mean, we know far more were attacked and had cybercrime launched at them, but this is a number of those that had the crime actually do something. It got through, it progressed. So of those 16%, quick breakdown, what happened, what the result? So 7%, if we're looking at businesses, I'll go off the businesses one rather than charities for this, but 7% had temporary loss or access to files. So they couldn't access their files. Again, large detriment financially and to business. He had 6% web applications going down, servers being taken offline. So not being able to get onto their actual servers. Again, huge business disruption there. 3% had their systems or software corrupted or damaged. 3% lost access to a third-party service, so it could be to their supplier services. 2% personal data altered, destroyed, or taken, and then 2% money stolen. Then there's also physical damage as well. So a lot of detriment here in the crimes that are actually going through as a success. Now, they then broke this down to see how these attacks were launched, and the overwhelming majority came through phishing attacks, so email fraud. These came through, almost all of them that were successful were as a result of an email coming through which lured someone into providing or volunteering information. 34% were others impersonating emails or staff. So that's called CEO fraud. We'll touch into these as we go through. And 18% malware. I won't go through all the others because I just want to focus on those three main ones today. So as I broke those down, as I say, the main ones you're looking at, what are those main risks to social care organizations? You've got phishing attacks. I say people impersonate emails, takeovers or attempts to take over a website, hacking or attempted hacking, malware, ransomware, and then denial of service, also known as DDoS. That's basically when someone takes down a server or site, they bombard it with traffic so people can't get onto it. So really disrupting their services. But these are what we're looking for when we are focusing on cybercrime within social care and what we need to be aware of and how to protect ourselves from. So I put a bit more data in here. It's a lot to go through. I won't go through all of this in great detail, but it's really just to break down the financial implications to organizations of financial crime. The average long-term direct cost, the average to all business was £500. And the average long-term cost to those who had an outcome, so it was £500 just to those who didn't have the attack go through. That could be down to staff training or improving systems, or it could be anything that they've put that money towards, but that's an average. And so it is affecting all organizations who are reporting any form of cybercrime, even if it isn't successful. there is still some financial implication. Now, to those who had an outcome, the long-term direct cost was around £3,000. So that's if it went through, what was the long-term direct cost? Now they have long-term costs, they have short-term costs. You have to add those together. That makes the overall costing even more. Short-term was £530 without an outcome, and long-term with an outcome was about £3,100. So all accumulates. And then just going a bit more in detail, if we look at the average in total, so short and long term, you're looking at those who didn't have an outcome, so the attack didn't go through, costing around 1,600. And of those that did have the attack go through, the overall costing was around over £8,000. It gets even more if you're looking into charities. So they actually had all charities around £21,000 there. And that just may be how the company's structured, may not having the financial resources to put into as extensive cybersecurity as an operational business would. Now, also alongside this, you have organizations who identified data breaches. So the average cost, again, those, if we remove those reporting £0, there are some that it doesn't cost anything. But if we just look at those that it had some financial implication, those that had no outcome was around £3,000, and those with an outcome was over £10,000. So there are financial implications here, and they can be quite significant. Again, if you go up to charities, you're looking around £30,000 there of the damage caused, and trying to prevent this from happening in general. So as we move into the next area, what I'm going to do is we're going to have a look at a short quiz, which if you can complete, that'll be fantastic, although we can complete it together. I'm just going to drag it across. There is a link which I'm going to pop into the chat right now. So if I can direct everyone to the chat, click on that link, you can start filling out this quiz. We will work through it together as well. Just get a general idea. But if you click on that, that'll be fantastic. And then all you need to do is start going through and completing these questions as seen on the screen. So the first question, just to everybody here, which of the following is not personal data? Now, really important that we focus on personal data, as a lot of what cyber criminals are trying to get hold of is personal data. They can use that for a variety of different attacks, loads of different ways they can use that to cause more damage, detriment, and so we need to protect that data. So important that we understand what we're protecting in the first place, and that's why we've put this quiz together. So which of the following is not personal data? So you've got equipment purchase relating to a specific interest. So that's someone buying something that relates to something they're interested in. You've got travel itineraries. You've got liking a hobby page on Facebook. You've got music playlists, or none of those are actually not personal data. So they're all personal data. Does anyone know? Again, we can do, again, you can pop this in the chat or you can submit your response. I'll just give you a few seconds. I will say what the answer is on this one. So in this case, the answer is actually none of the above. These are all examples of personal data. Now, often when we think of personal data, people jump straight to, well, it's name, date of birth, that kind of thing. No, personal data can be indirect, and it states that within legislation. So all of these are an example of personal data that would need protecting if we held that data. Question 2, your IP address can be considered personal data. And again, can your IP address be considered personal data? We will show the correct answer. Yes, that is true. Your IP address is definitely personal data, as it identifies your location. We'll go across again. So which law is associated with personal data protection in Europe? And again, we will it's not loading on my screen at the moment, but there is a data protection law in Europe, which is basically the right to it's the right to hide our information. So we right to forget. So we have the right as an individual for our information to be deleted if we request it to be deleted. And the same goes for anyone within your care. Same goes for anybody who might be associated with your organization. they have the right for you not to hold their data. Though it is our responsibility to inform them of the issue of that happening. So right to be forgotten is the correct answer there. What is the main purpose of a privacy policy? So again, you as an organization should have privacy policies. What is the main purpose of that? And again, we'll go across to the response. The main purpose of a privacy policy is that, again, you are giving consent to your personal data to being processed. Again, very important on there. Privacy policy basically showcases to an individual that they must, that you're holding their data, and that what you're doing with that data, and is making that transparent between you and that individual. And the same goes for in your workplace. You should have privacy policies in place. So again, you must always give consent to your personal data to be processed is true. You must give consent to that. Although there are different meanings around that. There is implied consent as well, but I'm not going to get into that right now because, again, we have got a lot to get through today. Which of these is good practice for protecting personal data? Again, we got one answered here, which is encryption of personal devices. So good practice of it. Train employees once a year. Should probably be training them more around personal data. Human error is the number one cause for data breaches, security incidents. If those phishing attacks were only successful because people were clicking on things they should not be clicking on. If we trained our employees what to look out for and to be vigilant, they probably wouldn't have been clicking on certain links. Using public Wi-Fi with your VPN. Again, trick question here. Often people say, yeah, you can use public Wi-Fi as long as you've got virtual private network. Yes, virtual private network does instill a layer of security. However, it does not protect you entirely. Those networks can still be unencrypted. They can still have malware distribution, and they can still have fake networks as well on there, which can lure people in. Indirectly discussing an issue that could impact someone. So if you're just having a conversation with somebody indirectly and someone hears it and they're able to associate that conversation with somebody else, that is personal data. And then encryption of devices. As I say, encryption devices, very important there. That question is the correct answer. We should be encrypting our devices. It basically means that we are hiding the contents of the data that we're trying to secure. If someone tries to hack into our device, they will just get through unreadable text. And then what should you do if you suspect your personal data has been breached? I got one answer here, which is report it and inform respectable individuals. Yeah, absolutely. If we suspect that our data is being breached, and I've put an answer here as well, report it to your data lead. So that is to the respectable individual. You should have somebody who is a data lead in your organization. It might be yourself. They will know what to do in that incident. And if it does impact the rights and freedoms of an individual, you need to be reporting that to the ICO. They are the regulators. They are the people that enforce this. And so they are the ones that will be able to give you those next steps, what to do, what to put in place to protect them people and yourself. And then finally, which organisation oversees data protection in the UK? So, yep, Data Protection Act is the legislation, and the people who enforce that are the ICO. So again, if we do suspect any Data Protection Act, any data breach, we should be submitting that to the ICO. So just a quick quiz there, just to highlight what personal data is, how it's being regulated. Now, as I say, a lot of people misunderstand personal data. And personal data can have many more, well, it extends much further than just dates of birth, names, email addresses. And so we're just going to look at some certain types of personal data in here. Again, I won't go through all of these as there are quite a lot, but these can be things like anything related to your contact information, financial information, so account numbers, loan history, payment histories, bank statements, identification numbers, even employment. So anything around employment, even things like performance reviews, that can be deemed personal data. Health information, so even things like allergy information, blood type, prescription details. Education, you've got online information there, so browsing history, cookies, Geographical data, so travel itineraries and location data. You've got religious, so if people have religious affiliation, that again, social media interests on there, if they've liked certain groups, that is personal data. Memberships, you've got social media as well, so if people are reacting or liking or commenting on things, that is personal data. Family information, got physical, obviously, those physical traits. Tech, as we mentioned before, certain addresses or IP numbers or Wi-Fi networks. Travel records, communication, and then you've got the more obscure examples on there. So as I say, personal data, there can be thousands of examples of it. And that's why any of these that we contain as an organization, we need to be protecting for everybody, ourselves, our staff, and those related to the organization. They can be things like recreational interests, like hobby groups, event tickets, game achievements, psychological traits, so therapy records, emotional assessments, mood tracking data, behavioral, so nutrition logs, stress levels, substance use, so things like rehab, alcohol records, medical, really can be quite obscure, but it's anything that can identify an individual. And as we dive deeper into that, you then have sensitive data or special category, which has even more legislation applied to it. So there is stronger legal protection for more sensitive information. So you've got things like race, ethnic background, political opinions, religious beliefs, health, those kind of things. You are now applying even more legislation to. So as you see, as an organisation, we will be containing personal data, and criminals will try to get hold of this. It's really important that we are protecting this because law does protect it. And also it protects those individuals. They've entrusted you to protect that. And the data protection legislation controls how your personal information is used by organizations. As I say, if you are holding personal data, you must use it lawfully and transparently for specified and explicit purposes. Again, very important that we are containing that correctly, we're keeping it safe, and we're protecting it from loss, destruction, and damage. And as I say, personal data, the definition is any information that relates to an identified or identifiable individual, so a person. If you're able to identify a person through a bit of information, if it's direct or indirect, that is personal data. So any information that you could link to back to a person is deemed personal. It doesn't it doesn't account or it doesn't link to a deceased person, doesn't constitute personal data. This is only for living individuals. So as I say, any individual that can be identified directly or indirectly and can be identified through many different ways. Now, what are the non-compliance consequences? Or if we do have a cyber attack that's successful, if we're not handling that data correctly and it opens us up to cybercrime, well, you've got detriment to staff, patients, residents, stakeholders, reputational damage, financial impacts, as we looked at before, and then time impact, that business continuity. It can shut down our services and cause huge detriment there. And everybody is responsible for protecting personal data. If you work for an organization, you are responsible for keeping that personal data safe. All our staff are. We must understand how to protect that data. So again, just use the comments here. You don't have to share if you don't want to, but does anyone have any experience with a data breach? You don't have to share exactly what the data breach is, but if you have had experience, what might that look like? Whilst you're typing, I'll give a couple of examples on my end as well. I have a background working very closely within the banking sector, and there are a few instances where we had effectively people who are subject to data breaches. Quite a few. These are individuals we're working with, not within the bank, but they range from a whole host of things, and we've really seen everything in these circumstances. But one example is email, and it can be this simple of people adding a load of people into an email, forgetting to hide their email addresses and then sending it. And so everybody can now see everybody's email addresses. Brilliant. So thankfully I'm not, yep, that's great that you haven't. And that's what we're hopefully looking for, that you haven't had these data breaches coming through. Another example, it can be very simple. Another example could be a phishing attack. So just simply someone getting a phishing attack through an email, clicking on it, submitting details, realizing it's a phishing attack. It didn't go anywhere, but they didn't report it. And so that phishing attack then suddenly went to all members of staff. And because nobody ever reported or let anyone know, other members of staff were subject to that same attack. And it went through for some of them. We've got another one, just spoken to someone where the solicitor emailed confidential information to the work person. They're still waiting for the solicitor's DPO to get back to them. So again, how are we handling this information is really important. And we've got some real incidents here, just some quick case studies, which I'm going to highlight within Care. First one, which I want to go through is a ransomware attack. There was a situation, we've just had another one working in the hospital and someone passed on, gave wrong family information about death. Colleague gave information in panic since it was an unexpected death. So you can see how that one would have had quite dramatic consequences there, especially giving wrong information about a death. And that's why it's important that we are fact-finding, we're using the information correctly, we are following the correct procedures and policies in how we handle information so it doesn't cause detriment or confusion. We need to keep that trust in place because that detriment can be wide-ranging. So in this ransomware example, and we'll go through what ransomware looks like, but basically an organization had a ransomware attack which came through onto their server. Now, we don't actually know how it got through. It seems more that it was a targeted attack. So what happened was the criminal targeted the organization, and because the organization had really weak security controls, effectively their server was being managed by one person. And they didn't have, prolific or secure systems in place. The criminals were able to get into the server within a few seconds. And as a result, they were able to install malware onto the system, which basically locked their systems. And the organization couldn't get it off. So they had to send basically their servers to be analyzed by a third party in America. And their systems were locked for months. So they had to literally rely on paper for months. That is the kind of detriment this can have. And what is ransomware? I've got an example here. I always use this example because it's the first case of ransomware I ever encountered back in 2012. But it can look very different to this. Basically, what happened was I went on my computer one day and I could, just like you're seeing on your screen now, I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see my start menu. I couldn't click on anything but this screen. My camera turned on so I could see myself here, and it was pretending to be from the police, and it was telling me that I needed to pay a fine. And the only way I could pay that fine was in a gift voucher, which is really unusual. Now, obviously a scam. What they're trying to do is they're trying to pretend they're someone in authority to scare me. I can see myself, so now I'm scared they might be recording me. And people will just fill out this information. But again, huge red flag if they're tending to get vouchers. The reason they're doing this is it's untraceable. And that's how they basically get away with stealing your money and it not being traced. But there are examples where organizations go onto their computers, they have something just like this, but it's telling them that all their files have been encrypted. And if they don't act in the next, and they'll give them a time limit, 24 hours, 72 hours, all their files will be deleted. And so it causes panic and confusion. Just putting it across to you in the meeting. So again, share your thoughts in the messages. But what would you do if you did log in one day on your computer and you saw that there was ransomware and it's telling you have 24 hours to pay, otherwise they will delete every file on your system? What are you going to do? So again, just throw out some thoughts there. And then I'll tell you an exact step process that I've put together, which usually works in most cases. But as I say, in that situation, when I first had it, I didn't know what to do in that situation. There was a bit of panic. Fortunately, I went onto a different computer and watched a YouTube video on how to get rid of the ransomware. Probably not what I would recommend you to do, as there are steps you can do right now, and I'll tell you what to do. But again, what I would do in this situation, let's say get on our computer one day, every single person in our organization cannot do anything because we have ransomware. Someone's got in, they've locked all of our systems. What do I do? First thing that I'd recommend you to do is just disconnect your internet. Now, sometimes cyber criminals can install a form of malware on your computer alongside the ransomware, which can have remote access to your computer. And they could remotely be sharing this onto your system. If you disconnect the internet, it just breaks that point of contact between them and yourself. So first point I would start with. Then turn your computer off, turn it back on, and as just before it goes up onto the start menu, press F8. F8 will put your computer into safe mode, and safe mode will basically stop pop-up windows from opening. And in most cases, there are some cases where they do encrypt your data, and if that happens, like in the case we had that I shared a moment ago, very rare, but it does happen. If they do encrypt your data, you're going to need to get IT specialist involved. But in most cases, they are just trying to scare you, and they won't have actually encrypted your data. What they're doing instead is they're just causing a pop-up window to open whenever your computer opens. So if you're in safe mode, it won't happen. So get your computer into safe mode. Again, press F8 on a Windows device, press Shift on a Mac. When you're in safe mode, run an antivirus scan. That will find the malware and it will delete it. No worries, I've just got your message there. We are recording this, so we can get that recording out to you if necessary. You can then restore your device. You can do that, and you can reset your device as a last resort. But that's what you would do in a situation of ransomware. So just disconnect your internet, turn the computer off, start the computer in safe mode, and run an antivirus scan. Now, another incident that can happen is email spoofing. So that's where a hacker attempts to divert a refund payment. So basically, in this case, this is what happened. I'll give you the example for this story. Basically, there was a manager and a family member who were emailing back and forth about a refund that the family was due. So the family were due a refund. They were communicating. They had an email chain. And then the manager asked for bank details from the family member. The family member provided them the bank details. The manager went to pay. However, the bank blocked the payment. The manager got very frustrated as they could not make this refund payment, phoned the bank, quite frustrated with them. I've had this experience having worked in banking, but eventually phoned the relative, and the relative confirmed that they never actually received those bank details or made a payment. Now, the part here that's strange is that they had been emailing the whole time, and the email had come from that person on the same email chain. Now, what happened here was criminals, they can hack into an email chain. So this is why end-to-end encryption is so important. With secure email, you can have end-to-end encryption, which just basically protects that email in transit. But if it's not there, a criminal can hack into that email in transit and change the content. Nada, I can see you got your hand up.
Yes, I just have a question. Now you're mentioning encryption. So if the manager used NHS Mail, which is a secure mail,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
the family member didn't, could they still in interrupt or hack into this email chain?
So no, because NHS Mail has the end-to-end encryption. That's the so emails coming from the manager cannot be changed. However, with NHS Mail, it is a secure mail service. It's very difficult to have emails come through that have been altered or spoofed. So it's really unlikely to happen. That's not saying it doesn't. There are very rare instances where criminals are very sophisticated and they will be able to get through any system, even a secure email system. And that's why it's important to report it to the provider, and then they will basically go and patch that. The secure email will basically apply end-to-end encryption or hide the content. Even if someone is sending to an end-to-end encrypted email, it should theoretically hide that information. But there are still very rare cases in which cyber criminals can use very sophisticated tools to even bypass that. It's just encryption is the gold standard to protecting the contents. Doesn't mean it's absolutely impossible. There are still instances where they do still manage to find loopholes and get through.
Thank you.
Now, linking to this is also known as CEO fraud. That's basically what they experience here. CEO fraud can take many different scenarios. It doesn't just have to be the CEO, but it's basically where somebody is pretending to be the CEO or someone related to the organization. They just pretend to be someone they're not in a position of authority to try and get information. And in this one, this example, there was a company finance officer that received an email. This person thought it came from the CEO because it said it did. They used the same terminology. They used the same phrases. The email address looked like it came from the CEO. And the CEO was asking for payment details and bank details of residents and other additional information on there, and which the finance officer then the finance officer provided. And they only realised that it was an attack when they spoke to the real CEO. The real CEO spoke to the finance officer, and they basically said they mentioned that it was not them. So that's how they determined it wasn't them. And again, this is CEO fraud. They are trying to deceive you, instilling information. How do they do this? The criminal will do. Sorry. The criminal will do basically research. They'll research the organization for a period of time. They'll steal information on the organization, and then once they've got enough, they will basically spoof an email or even hack an email chain, like we mentioned before. Spoofing is where, God, bear with me a moment. I'm going to cough 1 second. See me choking then on camera, so suddenly choking there. So as I say, what they'll then do is they'll spoof or hack an email account. So they can use an email that looks very similar to a real email. That's called spoofing. Very hard to do on a secure email account because secure emails will verify these and they won't usually let them through or flag it. They can hack an email account as well. So they can create a fake email address resembling the CEO's or compromise the real one, like we just mentioned. They'll then send an urgent or deceptive email pretending to be this person to try and get you to make payments, send details, sensitive information. And what they're doing is they're exploiting trust. Once they've got money, those funds are often laundered, so they'll transfer them across, move for a network, so they basically can't be found. Really difficult to trace those payments. And again, what would you do in this situation? Again, I've done a breakdown of exactly what you should do. CEO fraud can be quite deceptive, especially if people are tired or they're on their emails. They sometimes will literally just reply without double checking. But there are a few red flags we can look for. So just in the email alone, what I always say, if anybody is asking for money or payment or sensitive information, verify it with the actual person yourself. Make a phone call to the real person from the details you have, not from this alleged email. Report the email, so to whoever deals with your services. Report it to Action Fraud as well, so that's important. Action Fraud website, you can report as a business, CEO fraud, so they can be investigated. So not only is your service investigating it, but now Action Fraud are investigating it. Educating employees. So again, most of these are successful. Well, all of them are successful because an employee believes it. If we are educated and we understand what to look for and how these criminals operate, we're going to be able to bypass these issues. We run simulations as well with your employees. So again, we can simulate these scenarios to showcase what this looks like and what to look out for. And the most important is just verify payments. If someone is asking for money, verify it. In both those cases I mentioned before, with the manager emailing the family member and with the CEO emailing the finance officer could have just phoned the CEO and asked if it was real, and the manager could have just phoned the family members and checked if it was real. I would always verify. And we used to say that in a bank. Always phone up the person you're making a payment to. Don't just go off email. Don't go off text message. Just check, because this does happen. And then also enhance email security. With secure email, it means that these emails are going to have a lot harder time to get through. So what are the best practices for protecting ourselves from what the best practices for protecting data effectively? How can we keep ourselves safe from cybercrime? How can we keep ourselves and our data safe? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a link into the chat. You can put up some words and phrases. We've already had one submitted, which is phishing. So obviously best practices are protect ourselves from phishing. As I stated before, the number one cause of cyber attack are phishing attacks. They come through as emails in all of those instances. All three of them could have come through as an email. All of them that could have been the link, the key to get through. And we know 85% of those successful attacks on social care were done through phishing attacks. Those are email scams. So that's one place we can, that's one best practice for protecting data, is to understand phishing attacks. We've got strong passwords, training, double check any correspondence. Yeah, absolutely. So having strong passwords, absolutely essential. And not only just having strong passwords, but understanding what makes a strong password. A lot of people just use personal data, or they believe that a criminal is literally trying to guess their password. That's not the case in most situations. Training, 100%, 98% of cybercrime is successful because of human error. If we train our staff to be vigilant, they will be vigilant. Double check correspondence, absolutely essential there. So let's just dive a bit more into phishing. As I said, it is the biggest threat in all cases. Now, it's not literally catching a fish, although the terminology comes because in most instances of phishing, the cybercriminal was literally casting a net, trying to tens of thousands of people, hoping that a few will take the bait. But there can be targeted phishing attacks. And in phishing, what the criminal is doing is they're doing something called social engineering, which is exploiting how the human brain works. And they'll often use fearful language. They'll often use urgent language in there to try and get us to act out of fight or flight. And they'll often come from a position of authority, CEO, bank, police, these kinds of people in authority. And they can also exploit our greed. So try and get us to win something, surveys, prizes. Again, there's loads of ways they do this, but we're generally looking for these tactics. And if you're getting correspondence that have any of these tactics applied to them, usually a red flag. So this is an example of a phishing email. We can dissect some of those red flags in here of how they've employed some of those tactics that we've just mentioned. And the first one is the title of the email, which is your account access has been limited. So immediately, got your backup, thinking, why is my account being limited? If we go into that email, we should start to dissect it. As I said, these criminals will try and get you to act out of fight or flight. We need to fight this by slowing our thinking down and making logical decisions. Best way to do that, analyze everything in front of you. First thing is check the email address. Does it look legitimate? A lot of times it just looks like a load of random jumbled up characters. That's a big red flag that it's a phishing email. In this case, we have services at PayPal, accounts.com. That looks real. However, it still might not be. Don't just go off that. It could be a spoofed email, or as I said before, they could hack into the email chain. The next red flag is Dear PayPal customer. So is it direct? Is it indirect? In most phishing attacks, they will not direct you because they've sent this to loads of people at once. However, it's still not enough to go off. They can do targeted attacks. Just look a bit further. Your account will be limited. You have 24 hours to solve the problem. Your account be disabled permanently. Now that's fearful and that's urgent. They're saying we will permanently disable your account if you don't act 24 hours. That is the biggest red flag. There is no scenario where this would actually happen with an organization. And if we go a bit further, we believe that your account is in danger from unauthorized users. You are in danger. Your account's in danger. Your money's in danger. And then contact, confirm your information. So they're getting you to click on a link, and that link will inevitably take you to a fake website. So full of red flags here, and you can see how they're using those psychological tactics to lure you in. And that's why it's really important that we have secure email. Secure email will limit how many phishing attacks come through. There are standards that have been applied. You have teams that will work on these to prevent spoofing and apply end-to-end encryption. Now, as a social care provider, it is recommended, and you should in certain cases have secure mail. What is secure mail? As I said, it protects the contents of your emails, end-to-end encryption. It applies confidentiality, integrity, and authenticity. There are authentication methods on there like multi-factor authentication, and they meet GDPR requirements. So one way you can fulfill this is by meeting the secure email standard. Now, if you are a social care organisation that deals with anything related to the NHS, so you have any NHS contracts, you have any access to NHS systems, or you have access to NHS patient details, it is a mandatory requirement to meet the secure email standard. Now, if you don't do any of that, it would still be highly recommended, just to avoid any of these attacks from getting through. And you can also showcase that you are accredited, you are part of the secure email standards to implement that trust as a business. Now, it is valid for organisations that provide health and social care, have an active ODS code, and need to exchange information. You do need to, again, this is part of the Health and Social Care Act 2012, Section 250. You'll find the information on this and where it applies and why you need to. Again, I've just mentioned before, if you have those contracts with NHS, you're using that information, you're sending sensitive data by email, then you need to have it. GDPR and Data Protection Act will be met by complying with the secure email standard. And that goes in all cases. So you're sending sensitive data in all cases. If you have complied with this, regardless of NHS or not, you know those emails are safe and you know you're meeting the GDPR requirements, which fall on all of us. Now, the easiest way to do this as a social care provider. Now, you can have Microsoft 365 as a business account, but you do need to meet certain criteria in order to do that. And you do need somebody to implement certain controls in the email. And the same goes to Google Workspace. Now, to avoid all of that, have a really easy time with this, you have the ability to have NHS Mail, regardless of if you have the NHS or not. Now, that is open to all of you, as long as you have an ODS code and as long as you've completed the DSPT, which is a free toolkit, which basically ensures that you have everything in place to protect data. And all you need to do to get NHS Mail is complete the online form. Super simple, provided you've got, oh, I've accidentally sent that. Provided you've got the correct information in there. As I say, it's a, I'm just going to send that form again because for some reason what it did was it sent a link to my forms. There we are. So just a quick survey. It just says, do you have an HTML? No. Have you done the DSPT? Yes. Do you have your CQC information? Yes. Put your postcode in and then you fill out the form. Once you've done that, within 24 hours, you will have a secure email service in place that you can send confidential data. That is the easiest way to do this as a social care provider. I do a full session around secure email, and there are additional pieces of information in there. But that's an hour session, and I'm not going to go through that today. You can refer back to that one. So as I said, you do need to complete the DSPT for this, but the DSPT as well, it ensures that you have secure controls in place for protecting yourself from cybercrime too. So a really useful tool, free tool. Just very quickly, again, you don't need to, I'm not going to share a survey for this one, but just in the chat, has anyone completed the DSPT before? Our organisation works with a lot of organisations to provide support with DSPT to ensure that you can get that completed. And this goes to people viewing this session at a later date and those in the meeting. If you haven't done it, or you need support, you need to republish. DSPT does need to republish yearly. If it isn't, it's not valid. And if you need support with that, just drop me an email. It's sam@sussexdigitalteam.co.uk and I'll be able to get you in a call and then I'll be able to support you with the DSPT, get that all in place for you. So really important there. And that's just to anyone in this meeting who needs help with that. As I say, it is a free online self-assessment of health and social care providers, data security and protection policies. So it guides you through everything. Make sure you have everything in place. And any information that care providers hold on persons, staff, clients, vendors, partners, anyone, it will go through all of that and ensure you have full protection in place. Should you have an inspection, you can demonstrate that as an organisation. And all adult social care services in England are strongly recommended to complete it, and it is now moving into the position that it is starting to be a requirement for you to have completed the DSPT. Now, as I say, it's simple. All you need to do is register. Just go online, DSPT, register for it. Make sure you have an ODS code. That is important. If you need help with that, we can help you. Once you've registered, and you've filled out the details correctly, it will go into a social care view, and then you just basically go through and work through that toolkit, completing those mandatory questions. Now, alongside the DSPT is Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus. And Cyber Essentials, like DSPT, will look at data protection. Cyber Essentials will look at cyber protection. Now, Cyber Essentials is really good if you work with suppliers if they have Cyber Essentials themselves. It just validates that they are protecting their services and systems that you're using. So it's a good thing to look for in suppliers, but it's also a good thing to have yourself because, as I said, it will ensure that you have the protection measures required for cyber security. And so you know your systems are secure, and you can use it as a business to market yourself, to show that you have cyber security, so you can implement that trust. Now, Cyber Essentials Plus links in with the DSPT. So if you do complete Cyber Essentials Plus, you can then meet the highest requirement of DSPT to stand and exceed. Again, you can showcase that as an organization that you are exceeding data protection standards by having the two together. And again, if you do need any support with Cyber Essentials, drop me an email, even just for some information, or to open up that dialogue. Send an email to sam@sussexdigitalteam.co.uk, and we can spend a decent amount of time just going through that, sharing information, pointing to where you can go to, and we can get that through accredited for you. If that's something that you need to go through and do. So that's everything that I want to cover off today. It's a lot of information, but it's just to highlight those key areas for cybersecurity. As we know, there is financial detriment, as we know it is active, and there is in this space. It is very prevalent, and we know that the biggest threats that are coming through, the biggest risks are those phishing attacks and then distributing malware, CEO fraud. And so we need to know how to protect ourselves from those. And that's what this presentation aimed to do today. And then alongside that, as an organization, what you can do to demonstrate that you are protecting your organization, to install trust, is by having those areas completed, such as Secure Mail, DSPT, or Cyber Essentials. So you can go across to our website, which is the sussexdigitalteam.co.uk. We've got loads more information, lots more resources and sessions on there. Please do drop me an email, book in now for DSPT support, secure email support, or Cyber Essentials support. Just drop me an email, I'll be able to support you with that. But that is everything from me. So I will open up for any questions. We will stop the recording now.